Recording live in the lucky number 7 lounge. This is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and you have stumbled across episode 44, dealing with the morning after, because you know those bad decisions come with a price tag. We're also going to bring you our drink of the day and update you on some Las Vegas news, including big YouTube channel news. But before we could do any of that, we've got to bring in the founder of Dine Drink Travel himself, the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the leader of the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the man who's always waiting on that limo to take him to his next luxury destination. Of course, I mean Bill. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, John. How are you today?
I am doing very good and sipping into this cocktail and trying to decide if I like it or not.
So I do like it, but that's because it turns out to be Alabama in July right now, and this cocktail is cold. And right now, my people in Alabama are wildly in favor of anything that's cold. I assume that in the dusty, barren West Plains of Western Texas, you still like things that are cold this time of year, right, John?
Yes, I do. And I served this up, and we'll get into the description in a minute. I think due to the weather, rocks would have been better. But you know, let's tell the listeners what we're drinking. So tonight we are having the Italian Gentleman. Now, this was invented in 2014, and I forgot to type into the run sheet the name of the two people who came up with this cocktail. But you can think of it as if a Boulevardier and a whiskey sour had a funky, bitter little baby. So here's the rundown. Ounce and a half of Campari, ounce and a half of bourbon, doesn't specify a bourbon, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, 1/4 ounce of simple syrup, a dash of orange bitters, which they say is optional. I think anytime you can add bitters, you should. You shake all that over ice, strain it out into a coupe glass, or if your kids have broken all of your stemware, just a normal cocktail glass, garnish with a lemon wheel. All right, Bill, let's talk about your approach to this. Did you make any variations, and what was your bourbon?
So I did make a variation. Nothing like taking the base cocktail and making it into Navy grog like you did last week. But still, me being me, I made a variation, and one of them was a simple mistake. I forgot to put orange bitters in mine, which is weird because I love orange bitters. Like, I wasn't trying to alter the drink. I just messed up. I'd had a day at work. I was thirsty to drink. And it would have been better had I put the orange bitters in there. The other thing I did was I didn't put in an ounce and a half of bourbon. I put in 3 ounces of bourbon and kept everything else the same. And I think I really like that because the Campari is good, but it's kind of got a little bit of a bitter note to it. And that is decreased by, increasing the ratio of bourbon, where I used Old Forester, which is kind of my go-to, not for a sipping bourbon, but for something like this where I'm mixing it with several other ingredients. I guess the last note is to get to 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. What I used was about half of a fresh lemon, rather than, the pre-done lemon juice or anything like that. And I left the last bits of the lemon there in the shaker when I shook it up. And to me, the fresh lemon juice winds up being a whole lot better than had I done just like the squeeze bottle lemon juice. How about you, John? What did you do with this drink?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that, in my opinion, most bottled lemon and lime juices are a cocktail sin. Now, there's one company that makes a key lime that's pretty decent. There's a few others out there that are drinkable, but most of them are bad, and fresh citrus is always better. So I applaud you for doing fresh citrus. Listeners, anytime you have the ability to do fresh citrus, do it. I made mine to spec. Now, my lemon was a little juicy, so I'm slightly over the 3/4 of an ounce. And I was a little heavy with my 1/4 ounce of simple because Campari is very bitter, but it's pretty close to spec. And I do think the 1-to-1 ratio of bourbon to Campari I think more bourbon would have been a good move, but I was committed to making it. A lot of times, listeners, I'll make my wife's to spec, taste hers, and then decide whether I want to play with mine or not. Or if it's to my liking, I like stronger, more assertive things, I'll tweak it for her. But she's under the weather, so she's not having a drink tonight. Drinking this to spec, I used Old Granddad Bottled and Bond. I think an assertive, younger, high proof bourbon is really important, because if I'd gone with an 80 proof bourbon or something that's wheat based instead of rye, I think the bitterness of the Campari would have made this really hard to drink. I would have had to add more. The other thing I'll say is, it says the orange bitters is optional, so I just did a small dash. While you were given a description, I went ahead and added a very aggressive John dash of bitters, which is probably about 6 dashes. The orange bitters really makes the Campari open up so that bitterness is still there, but it's more well-rounded. If you're going to keep the 1-to-1 ratio, do not skip the orange bitters, because I think the orange flavor is needed to kind of help balance that Campari. If you don't want to add more orange bitters like you did, Bill, I think listeners should probably, instead of a 1-to-1 ratio, maybe 2 ounces of bourbon to 1.5 ounces of Campari, or 2-to-1. You went 2-to-1, so 3 to 1.5. I do think more bourbon would be in order. But if you happen to like bitter flavors, grapefruit flavors, you're probably going to like this as is. Yeah, and I think this is a winner.
So 2 things. One, I'm going to make myself another one of these later on tonight, and I'm just not going to screw it up, right? Like, I'm going to make it with the orange bitters, but I'm going to keep the 2-to-1 ratio because I enjoyed that. The second thing is, and this is the second time in the last few episodes I've said something nice about you, which makes me feel super weird, but I'm going to do it anyway. I love your choice of the Old Granddad for this. They used to sell that at the liquor store by my house there in your hometown. Incidentally, I will be back there in 2-3 weeks now, and we can record live that weekend while we make other excellent life choices. But no, I think the Old Granddad was a phenomenal choice.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this as a mixing bourbon. I think you can't go wrong with it. So I'm very gruntled with that. All right. Well, Bill, let's jump into our main story. And our premise is, what do we do? Not that you and I have ever been in this situation, because as we've established, we go to Vegas for Bible study and salad bars. But if one were to overindulge in beverages in Las Vegas, the next morning, what do you do about it? So, Bill, I was looking over your list. I'm going to let you walk through it with listeners. I did notice there's an omission of something you used to do, and I may ask you about that. But what is your morning after routine?
So, part of it depends on where I am. But if I am anywhere near the south end of the Strip, I loved going to Re-Raw and that walkway between Mandalay Bay and Luxor, because Re-Raw understands the state that one is in when one is in that state. And while I, of course, have spent the entire previous evening at church, for you and the rest of our reprobate friends, I understand Re-Raw to have been a phenomenal choice for dealing with the effects of the next morning. They have all of the fried pork products. If you need some hair of the dog that bit you, they can absolutely help. So if I'm anywhere near the south end of the Strip, I go to Re-Raw. Similarly, if I am in downtown, I go to 7th and Carson. So I guess what you're hearing me say is an Irish pub theme works really well. Now, if there's not an Irish pub near where I am, one of the things that I love to do is go to the spa and go sit in the steam room, because the steam room will absolutely help me sweat out the after effects of the night before. Some of the other things are, I want in-room coffee. Let us say that theoretically you and our friends had maybe drink too much, which I had no control over whatsoever because I'm not an adult and I have no self-control or determination. But if theoretically somehow too much alcohol had gotten into my system, coffee is great, and I do not want to stand in line for 15 or 20 minutes at Starbucks. So I will look the night before to make sure I've got in-room coffee. I'll look, make sure it's set up and ready to go. And frankly, sometimes I'll pay the 10 or 15 bucks for their in-room mini bar coffee. The final thing is, if none of those things are available, if none of those things are convenient, salty pork products with a Bloody Mary. And it's not a great idea to keep drinking heavily the next morning, but like a Bloody Mary will help. Like I enjoy the salt. I enjoy the tomato juice. Just a little bit of vodka will help. And by salty pork products, bacon helps a lot, but it can be any number of other things. And it doesn't have to be pork. You can do something like a corned beef hash, although that is increasingly hard to find anymore. You can have a nice sausage, but yeah, a Bloody Mary and some sort of a salty pork product. But I'm curious, John, you say there is something I've left off this list. What is it that I used to do?
So, you would never, but some people we went to Vegas with used to seek out the IV the next morning to rehydrate.
It has been a very long time since I have made a choice like that. But as a younger person, sure, I can imagine where something like that might have wound up being necessary. Yeah, I'm actually proud of the fact that as I've gotten older, that hasn't been a requirement in some time. But sure, if you made fundamentally flawed choices the night before, nobody in Vegas is going to judge you. The IV clinic is right there. Also, I've stopped by those places to look and see what they cost, and the prices of those things, like everything else in Vegas, keeps going up. And at the $250 or $300 they charge now, you know what? I'll just make slightly better choices the night before and get some coffee and some bacon and call it a day, right? Like it's not worth what they charge, and I'm too old for that to be worth it much anymore. But how about you, John? What are your survival choices? Because I sense that, sometimes you make slightly better choices than a younger me might have made. What do you do, man?
So, first of all, I want to talk about some preventative steps. So, number one, make sure that night in Vegas is not the night before departure. You do not want to face Harry Reid Airport as a hangover zombie. Not a good idea. Mm-hmm. Do not recommend.
Although, and important. I apologize for stopping you. The only time I've ever made a TSA agent laugh was at the Las Vegas airport when I'm pretty sure it was still called McCarran. And the TSA agent's looking at my ID and he's like, "Good morning, sir. How are you today?" And I said, "I'm hungover and I need coffee. How are you?" And that may be the first time in the history of our republic that a TSA agent has actually laughed. But he quickly ascertained I was not a threat to aviation security and sent me on my way.
Other than possibly the restroom. So beyond that, the night before, get you some powdered electrolyte mix with vitamin B in it. There's a million of them on the market. For those of you that got the Beatus like me, they got them sugar-free. That's important. Hydrate before, during, and after, especially in Vegas in the summer, because over-drinking is bad, but over-drinking in the desert heat is potentially deadly. Not a good idea. Hydrate. And then the next day, job number one is a shower. You need that shower. It's recuperative. I'm with you on in-room coffee. A lot of times I'll buy cold brew coffee from CVS or Walgreens or the ABC store. One, because if I don't have a fridge, I could put that in my ice bucket to stay cold overnight. Two, cold brew coffee is lower in acidity. So if your stomach's not real happy, cold brew coffee goes down easier than hot coffee. That's a tip. And if you need to, you can always have your cold brew coffee in the shower, or here in Texas, we have a tradition known as the shower beer. If you're a hair of the dog kind of person, the shower beer is not a bad idea. And I would recommend either a practically bottled water American light beer or a Guinness. You do not want a hoppy IPA. You do not want a brown ale. You do not want a barley wine. You either want like a Michelob Ultra, so that it's basically water, or you want Guinness, which is basically iced coffee, that kind of thing. And then after that, go seek bacon and even more coffee. And if you need it, more hair of the dog. And if that doesn't fix you, repeat the cycle. After breakfast, go back to your room, shower again, right? You'll be right as rain soon enough, but that's my advice. Shower, coffee, bacon.
No, I think that is phenomenal advice. And here's my question, John. Are there particular places you like to go to for coffee and bacon? And in addition to particular places, where does the Vegas buffet fit for you in terms of the morning after?
So, a couple of things I'll say. Number one, like you, if I'm anywhere near Reraw, I want to go to Reraw. Love, love, love Reraw. It's the perfect thing. Also, like you, if I'm downtown, 7th and Carson is a really good option. Buffet wise, it really depends on how my stomach's doing. If I've just got a foggy head, but I physically don't feel that bad, I'm just tired and maybe a slight headache. Yeah, the breakfast buffet, the brunch buffet, that could be very restorative. But if I'm feeling it in my gut, then I probably don't want to drop $45 on a brunch where all I'm going to do is hit the bacon bar. That seems like a waste of money. So it depends on how badly I've abused my body. But yeah, we've done the brunch buffet after a busy night, and it's worked out well. Heck, even the all-you-can-eat Mexican brunch at Border Grill in Mandalay was therapeutic as it could be the last time around. And like you, I've gotten old. I don't tend to be in the kind of shape the next morning where I can't handle a meal. But younger me had those mornings where food, yes. Too much food, no.
So, one of the things that I like about whatever buffet happens to be close to me is most of the buffets that are still open in Vegas tend to have a decent dim sum section. And that tends to be great for me for the morning after having over Vegas, particularly if they've got really any kind of Asian soup, like pho is good.
Yes.
Any of the Thai curries can be good.
Yes.
It almost doesn't matter which region of East Asia you're talking about. A lot of times the soups and the dim sum wind up being really good choices. And that's really hard to get if you're not at one of the high-end buffets. So I guess what I'm saying is if I'm anywhere mid or north strip, I probably go to one of the nice buffets or maybe the food court there at Resorts World. I would still rather go to an Irish pub, but those wind up being good choices for dealing with the next morning.
Well, I know it's no longer there, but there was a ramen shop in Chinatown that the three of us went to my first trip to Vegas. And that ramen broth, the Takatsu ramen, had curative powers. And even though that particular one is long gone, it turns out Vegas has a lot of ramen options, so I'm with you there. Also, the pork bao buns, perfection. Don't overlook taco salad pastor. I'll just throw that out there too. But again, we're back in, curative pork.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it almost doesn't matter what it looks like.
Well, Bill, with that, why don't you take us to our first news story?
So, listeners, we are recording this episode on Wednesday, July the 9th, and are going to release it on Friday, July the 11th. So this story is a little bit old, but we're including it because it's still on point. The Guardian, on a story that they ran on July 2nd, so a week ago today, debating whether the A's Stadium ever gets built, notes that the construction costs are increasing. They're increasing almost daily, and John Fisher, the owner of the A's, has seen costs rise from $1.5 billion to $1.75 billion, and that's an increase of $250 million for a project that already has strained financing. Now, I still believe this stadium... Okay, so those are the facts as we know them. I am now crossing into speculation. I still believe the stadium gets built. I don't know whether or not John Fisher is the owner of the A's when it happens, but I don't think there's any way that Major League Baseball allows this project to fail. I'm not sure where John Fisher comes up with the rest of the money, and the longer he waits, I think the worse the problem gets.
So, Mr. Fisher, here's my advice. I need you to go to the plaza, and I need you to take $1 billion and make sure you're at the single zero roulette wheel and put it on black and hope for the best.
Sure, because if you lose, you weren't going to have a baseball team anyway, and if you win, cool, you've got enough money to pay for a suite in your own stadium.
Yeah, I think that's the plan there. I don't think the Plaza takes that bet. No, I'm with you. You know, we talked about this last episode. Scott at Vital Vegas and other people have been saying this is never happening. I suppose this does raise the possibility of a reduced building plan on cheaper real estate. But I don't think Major League Baseball at this point, and we've talked about this, the league wants the A's in Vegas. They want baseball in Vegas. So I think somehow, some way this gets done. I think this location is still the best location long term for what's in the interest of Major League Baseball. Like you, I don't think John Fisher comes out of this as still the A's owner. I think there's somebody out there that would throw the money at this. It's just not him.
No, it is almost certainly not him. Well, John, what is going on further north up the strip?
So Scott at Vital Vegas is reporting substantial layoffs at Treasure Island amongst room attendants, cooks, servers, and bartenders. And we can, I assume, link this to reduced stays on the strip. And we've been reporting on that. So is everybody else with a podcast, a blog, or a YouTube channel. We're seeing those signs of there is pain being felt by casino operators. Just throwing it out there, maybe fix your prices and people might show up.
So I like what you said. I agree with what you said. I actually don't have as much a problem with the core prices as I do with all the dang fees. Like, don't make me use years of education to figure out what I'm paying. A price should be a price, and I get it. It's not going to be all inclusive. Like, my drink is going to cost me extra money. Right. But if there's a mandatory resort fee and you've got to pay it, just make it part of the price of the room. And if there's, whatever. Yeah, there are too many fees on too much in Vegas. And some of the prices that I absolutely expect to pay extra for are too high. I was on my May trip. I spent a night at the Aria, and I paid $27 for a double of Maker's Mark. To give you an idea, I just paid $30 for a bottle of Maker's Mark, and that double he poured me, that was not 3 ounces of alcohol. Come on, man. It might have been 2.
Well, and I will say that we have not heard reports of the gouging at TI like you do some of the other properties. I do want to throw out this bit of speculation. How much does it hurt TI that Mirage is closed and we're a year and a half away or more from the Hard Rock opening? How dependent has TI been? They were built as sister properties by Steve Wynn back in the day. How much does TI depend on that foot traffic from people next door?
Absolutely, because there's now effectively nothing to their north, right? You still have the Venetian across the street, and you've got the Wynn Caddy Corner across the street, but there is nothing directly to their north, and that absolutely, or I'm sorry, I apologize, there's nothing directly to their south, and there's never been anything to their north except for Circus Circus, which doesn't really count. So, that absolutely hurts.
Well, and let's be honest, the Venetian and Wynn crowd, I mean, there's people like you and me who will gladly do either. But if we're in a Wynn mindset, we're probably not kicking at TI much that trip and vice versa. The crossover of people who stay at TI and would walk into Mirage to game or dine and vice versa was strong. The kind of people that are going to go back and forth across the street between Venetian and TI, I think that's a much smaller Venn diagram.
Absolutely. Well, going back, John, to sports news, Chelsea Leahy, who is writing for SBNation.com, is arguing that the dynasty era for the Las Vegas Aces of the WNBA may be over. So the Aces won the WNBA championship in 2022 and 2023. Their banners were up everywhere for a couple of years when you went to Vegas. They made another strong run in 2024, but they were, the last time I checked, sitting at 8-9 on the season, although that was a couple of days ago. They are 10th in points per game and 12th in field goal percentage and 11th in assists. So whatever, they are suffering the same problem as, championship teams in most major sports. It is hard to maintain that kind of a dynasty. But I've got a slightly different question, John. What do you think about catching a major sports event in Las Vegas, whether it winds up being the Aces or whether it's the Raiders or whether it's the A's or whatever random college football game is going on in the Raiders Stadium? Do sports matter for you when you're going to Vegas as a tourist?
So I have never seen live sports in Vegas, but I would like to. I'm not a fan of any of the Vegas teams, although sometimes I think about switching allegiances. Part of the problem as a Cowboys fan is possibly the only ownership group worse than the Joneses is the Davis family. So if I was going to abandon my Cowboys, why would I pick the Raiders? That's just, tired of the right testy getting kicked. Let me get the left one kicked for a few years. That doesn't make any sense. But I think to go catch live sports in Vegas, either the visiting team would need to be a team I root for, or there needs to be a star player that has my curiosity. Like, I don't know much about the WNBA, but we've heard a lot about some of their big marquee players. Maybe I go catch one of them playing. I think I would see the Dallas Stars if they were playing the Knights, although that's a homer crowd, and I don't know that I really want to tick off the Knights fans by wearing any Stars gear. Absolutely would go see the Cowboys and the Raiders. I would probably be the most sober fan in the building, and that would be kind of fun. And when baseball shows up, I guarantee you, if they put that baseball stadium on that Tropicana site, I will find excuses to go to Vegas in the summer. I may sell a kidney and a few guitars to do it, but I'm there because baseball in Vegas sounds great.
You and I, though, have had occasion to watch the A's AA affiliate before. I don't know, and that absolutely, to me, changes the connection. Yes. Right.
Yeah. And boxing. I want to see boxing in Vegas. That just sounds great.
As long as everybody keeps their ears.
Yes, well, that's true. All right, so moving on to another story. According to the New York Post and multiple other sources, Kelly Clarkson canceled the Independence Day debut of her new residency at Caesar's Palace, blaming tired vocal cords in preparing for the show and wanting it to be perfect. The cancellation happened hours before the show. And Bill, you and I had the discussion on air. What is a fair resolution to fans when this happens? Because as you pointed out in our pre-show conversation, a lot of these tickets are picked up on the secondary market, so a refund only makes you halfway whole. So, things like this happen. Bill, what's your take on what would be a fair resolution for the fans?
So, I don't know. I understand the legal point, which is 100% the correct legal answer, that all Kelly Clarkson's people owe would be a refund of the printed price of the ticket. As you pointed out, though, that's probably not what people paid for the ticket. And if it's a big show like that, it's absolutely going to be central to the decision somebody made to go to Vegas. So I guess it partially depends on how did I book it. Did I do what you and I do, where everything is an independent choice, or did I book some kind of a package deal? Because there are hotels, particularly that have star performers, that will have package deals, and that would change it. I would feel like Clarkson's people had tried to do the right thing if they had refunded the ticket price and then there was something else that they don't technically owe me. Maybe we'll give you a discount on the next show. Maybe give me some drinks on the next show, which they have to know very few people are actually going to show up at, right? Like it is an incredibly cheap goodwill gesture. Now, if you booked it as part of a package with some hotel, then I think they owe you significantly more than that. But I know what the legal answer is. The legal answer doesn't feel fair to me, but I can't come up with a good answer of what's more fair than that. So I don't know, John. How about you? What strikes you as the right resolution here?
So I'm going to say two things. Number one, I have a lot of respect for Ms. Clarkson in this regard. when you go see Kelly Clarkson, and I'm not a Kelly Clarkson fan, but she sings. In the age of lip syncing, she sings. In the age of, if I'm not feeling good, I'll let auto-tune fix my bad voice, she sings. And I respect the fact that she wants to make sure that if she took your money and she walks out on that stage, that you get her at her best. Now, years ago, two of my friends and I, and we were all dirt broke and had no money. We spent money we couldn't afford to hear somebody who's not a nationally known country music icon, but he's a legend in the state of Texas, Robert Earl Keen. Saw him in Odessa, Texas. The tickets weren't super expensive, but I cannot stress how broke we were. We went, and Robert Earl Keen put on the worst show, and I've seen him like 7 or 8 times. Worst show ever. Terrible show. Spent money I couldn't afford to go to a show, and he did poorly. Now, later on at another show in Odessa, Texas, he shared the story that particular night at Dos Amigos in Odessa, about an hour before the show, a dog had somehow gotten into the performing venue, which is a bar that has a big open air area. Anyway, he got bit by a dog before the show. He and the band were all mad at each other and got up there, and he admits it was a bad show. And I've often had the thought, I think in hindsight, I would have rather had a refund than see one of my favorite artists phoning it in, which is kind of what happened, right? He went on with the show. In hindsight, I think I would have taken the refund. So that's number one. Number two, let me put it another way. Let's say you went to Vegas, mostly because you're a Kelly Clarkson fan, and that's why you picked those dates. But you get your money back, and you now have that money to spend on anything you want to do in Vegas. And you're not going to get to hear your girl sing, and I get that's disappointing. But instead of being at home that night, you were in Vegas, and oh, by the way, you have the $300 a ticket back in your pocket, and you could do a lot of Vegas stuff, even with today's prices, for $300. I think I would be just fine with the refund. And if I chose to overpay on the secondary market, that's the gamble I took. And I know that as a consumer, I think I'm fine with the refund.
All right. You've made some good arguments. I'm not there yet, but as happens so often, I'm going to chew on this for a couple of days. In the meantime, Fox 5 and other sources are reporting that there was a fire in a storage room in the parking structure at the Cromwell, which, listeners, if you don't know, is right in the fat middle of the Las Vegas Strip. Now, there's good news. Sprinklers contained the fire, and the Las Vegas Fire Department responded to the scene. But I've seen the pictures, and smoke was absolutely billowing out of the parking garage. I guess what I'm saying, folks, is the fact that it is Vegas doesn't somehow magically make problems go away, and we don't know what caused that fire. But don't do dumb stuff in Vegas because presumably somebody did something dumb. I don't know if it was bad wiring. I don't know if somebody threw away a cigarette. I don't know if whatever choice people were making, bad things are still bad things, and I'm grateful for the good work of the Las Vegas Fire Department, and nothing truly bad happened here.
Here. And, they're going to have to remodel the whole place anyway to become the Vanderpump. So glad nobody was hurt, apparently. All right. According to Mike Florio of NBC Sports, the 2028 Final Four will be held at Allegiant Stadium. Speaking of sporting events I would gladly go to. So, Bill, do you remember when major sports wouldn't go to Vegas because of fears of being corrupted by gambling?
Yeah, and it wasn't all that long ago, particularly for something like this in college sports where let's go ahead and assume for the sake of fun that there are some people on that team who make it to their junior or senior year, and they haven't yet gone to the NBA. You've got some people who've just barely turned 21 but are still super young and in Vegas. Yeah, I can see several ways that it goes south. Yeah, I absolutely remember that era. I think Vegas is very much trying to leave it. For you and I, most excitedly for baseball. But yeah, I don't actually watch that much basketball. I might go watch this, and even if I don't go live to it, we might do we might do another weekend like we did a couple of years ago with my brother-in-law Mark, God rest his soul, where we just go gamble and are around for for the last weekend of the tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds like fun to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. I would do that in a heartbeat.
All right. Well, in other Vegas news, and this story strikes me as a little bit weird, and it goes back to something that you talked about in episode 42, which we were ultimately sharing from Scott at Vital Vegas, but it's now confirmed by the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Carbone, which already has an outpost at the Aria, is going to be moving into the space at Bellagio that was previously occupied by Picasso. And folks, if you haven't been there, it is a stunningly beautiful space. It is going to be a slightly different emphasis than the existing space at the Aria. I'm a little bit curious, though, about the space or the strategy of having two different outposts of the same restaurant separated by like one hotel, because I get it. There's like Guy Fieri is all over, and there's some other, Bobby Flay is all over, but there's a difference between a burger joint versus a high-end joint, and there's a difference between the sort of real estate where the burger joint goes versus that space where Picasso was. So, John,
Right.
does this make any sense to you?
Well, not as the RJ reported it, but if you'll remember back in episode 42, we shared the details that Scott at Vital Vegas had reported over on his blog and on Twitter that Carbone, and I can't remember the name now, and I'm too lazy to pull up our run sheet. Carbone has trademarked a Carbone : something else name. So if Carbone is going to open a variation on itself that has a different menu, maybe a big emphasis on seafood given the lakeside connection to the Bellagio fountains and the barge that's going in, I think this could be really smart. So I hope it's not a case of we have the exact same menu at Aria and Bellagio. I suspect it won't be that. I suppose maybe they'll just move into Picasso and then that ownership group could do something else with the current Carbone space, or maybe it's, two versions of Carbone. But I'm going to withhold judgment till we see whether or not they do a slightly tweaked concept, a different menu. I hope they lean into seafood. I think Italian seafood with that view could be a real winner. So I'm going to withhold judgment till we know more. But I think there's a scenario where this is actually a genius move. But like you, if it turns out it's exact same menu in either place, well, why in the world would I ever go to the Aria location if I can get down into that space at Bellagio? So I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Absolutely.
Well, moving on to some other news and a little bit of clickbait. And by the way, I'm not going to move on just yet. By the way, the RJ needs to start giving Scott at Vital Vegas credit when they run with his stuff. Anyway, Neon Feast, which is managed by longtime Vegas food writer Al Mancini, and Neon News, which is a related website, which 2 episodes ago, we said the editor there was probably Al Mancini. I found out by listening to the Food and Loathing podcast that editor is one Miss Gemini Stevens, the co-host of the podcast. They have posted their list of restaurants with a view, and they got to this list by talking to their friends in the food and beverage industry. So they talk a lot to chefs, executive chefs, restaurant owners, head bartenders, and other food reviewers and food writers. So, Bill, looking over that list, anything stand out to you? Any surprises? Anything that you love? Anything that you want to check out?
So, I've had the privilege of going to about half of these restaurants. The one that I'm most curious about is Top of the World, mostly just because I don't like the rest of the stratosphere as a property, but I'd go pay for those views. Eiffel Tower is on this list. Those are stunning views. And I'm actually going there with our friends Zero and Mike the first night of the Labor Day trip. We've got reservations at Eiffel Tower, and I paid extra for one of the good tables because even paying extra, Eiffel Tower is now so much cheaper than Le Cirque across the street, like by a factor of probably $300 a diner, right? That's where I'm going for my upscale experience. Alley Lounge on 66 is great, but I think of it as more of a bar than a restaurant. Beer Park is great, although it's low enough down. I don't guess I saw enough of the views. Legacy Club, again, great, but I think of it as more of a bar. Same deal with Skyfall Lounge. So there are some beautiful views here. And they're talking about romantic, brunch night and all that. I guess I'm not seeing them so much as dinner places and restaurants. Also, if I care about the view, I love, so John, I'm so sorry. I just blocked out of the name, not House of Blues, but the club attached to the House of Blues down at Mandalay Bay.
The Foundation Room.
Yeah, the Foundation Room. So the food at the Foundation Room was not good, but the views at Foundation Room are great. The bar was great. I'm kind of surprised that the Foundation Room isn't on this list because the views are so stunning. The bar is great. And, whatever, the food didn't seem to have killed us. How about you? Like, which of these spots, if you can only pick one spot here, which one is it?
There's so many of these I have never tried, but I think I would want to try Vetri Casina just because, I do listen to the Food and Loathing podcast. They've talked about that restaurateur at his restaurants on many occasions. I don't eat, I got the beatus. I don't eat Italian food in normal life. Occasionally on a cheat day, I'll grab pizza, but I don't go to Italian restaurants where there's going to be breadsticks and pasta and dessert. I avoid that like the plague because it'll kill me. But there's no diabetes in Vegas. So hitting a good Italian restaurant in Vegas is a thing with me. And so going to Scott Vetri's place up there on the top of the Palms with that view, I think that's far and away the thing on this list I most want to go to. I'm also going to call BS on Beer Park. Like, go to Brewdog. Brewdog is taller and the beer is better. I'm not paying Vegas prices for a dadgum Budweiser and an average view of the Bellagio fountains. I'm sorry. Beer Park, no. Brewdog, yes. They're just wrong. They're just wrong. Been to Brew Park, fine, but not a great view. It's a good view, but no. If you want beer and a view in Vegas on the Strip, Brewdog all day, every day. All right. Enough of my ranting and raving about that. Bill, we have one more story, and it is about us. And since my videos suck, it's really about you. So I want you to toot your own horn because you have earned it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have two YouTube channels which are associated with this podcast. Dine Drink Vegas, which is short and focused reviews about things in Vegas, as well as Dine Drink Travel, which began about cruises, which my family and John's family used to take, and has over the years morphed to a channel about air travel, executive lounges, meals on the plane, and things like that. Our two YouTube channels have now surpassed 1 million total views. And I am exceedingly proud of that. So it is 550,000 on Dine Drink Vegas. It is 475,000 on Dine Drink Travel. But both of those seem to be on a pretty impressive geometric trajectory now. It took about a decade, actually 9 years now, of figuring out what I was doing. But I am immensely proud of the fact that our YouTube channels are now over 1 million views. And I am proud of our podcast. I am proud of those channels, but they're very different products. Here, we kind of talk through things at length. There on the channel, what me and John do, as well as my older child, Edwin, wind up doing, is a much shorter thing. So you can watch a 5 or 10 minute video and figure out, is this a place you want to go to? So no, the YouTube channels are doing phenomenally, and may we eventually start getting that kind of followership here on the podcast, because we need somebody to help us pay for the drinks that we make for the drink of the day, John.
That's right, because we are not shills. Nobody pays us, but we are for sale, or at least for rent. And
yeah, I'm for rent. I'm not for sale. I'm for rent.
I have a very good friend of mine who told me, never sell your soul, but you can always pawn with the intent to buy back. And that is some life advice I have lived on forever. Sylvia, if you happen to hear this, cheers to you. So I think that brings our podcast to an end. Bill just ran down all the places you can find us: YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever, at Dine Drink Travel or Dine Drink Vegas. And of course, me, I am at Dine Drink John. We are so glad you took the time to listen to us. We thank you very much for that. If you have friends who enjoy Las Vegas, please share our podcast with them so they can listen to us to help them plan their next trip. And if you have enemies that absolutely hate listening to fat, old Southern white guys talk endlessly for minutes on end, share this with them as a form of torture. Either way, you're helping us grow an audience and a channel. We thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.